There we go. We're live. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in once again to it's almost regular 5 o'clock slot now. Hence Herbivore's stolen the 6 p.m. slot. So I've stolen the 5 p.m. slot. But it seems ages since the last streamed, but it isn't. I think it was Wednesday when we had Zactivist on the channel. Anyway, guys, welcome to another stream. We've got Laws. Is that how we pronounce your name?
Yeah.
Laws. She is OctoberRainRocks. She has a YouTube channel. So please do check her out after the stream. I've left a link to her channel in the description box. And for anybody who's been reading my blog on my website, drmshlaw.com/blog, Laws was, I think, the first person to contribute to my blog a few weeks ago, months ago, whenever, that I asked people to contribute. And she contributed a commentary, a story almost about her son, who is autistic. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to be talking about Laura's story, her issues relating to veganism. You're vegan yourself, aren't you, Laura's? But there are issues that I think the vegan community and those kind of, on the outside looking in who don't know very much at all about autism. And I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination on autism. So hopefully we're all going to learn something in this stream. And if you've got any questions, I'll take questions at the end. But if you've got a super chat and you've got a burning question and you want to drop me a very small amount of money, then I will prioritize your question and we'll answer that whilst we're talking. So thanks for coming on, and let's just see who we've got in the chat before we start off. So we've got French Blue, Rebecca Brooks, Zactivist, Big Greenie. You're a new guy. I don't recognize your name. Hench Herbivore. Hi, Hench. Kayla, Nikki, Michael, Leon, another Michael. Who else? Chris, Vegan, Itchy, Ego. I don't know how to say your name. Sorry. Fly Vegan, and a few more just popping in. Tommy Kelly's here. Hi, Tommy. The 40-year-old vegan. So we've got a few people coming in. So without further ado, Laws, tell us all about yourself. If people don't know you, what are you all about? How long have you been vegan? What's your story?
Well, my name's Laws and I have a YouTube channel called OctoberRainRocks. I am 46 and I have a 23-year-old autistic son. Now, I've been vegan now for, I think it's about 4 years. I was vegetarian for about 20 years, and like most people, didn't know about the dairy or the egg industry and got a bit of a shock when I found out. And the reason why I wanted to come on here is because my son's autistic, but he's got a bunch of different sensory issues as well, quite complex. And the reason why I wanted to come on here was to share my opinion and thoughts and kind of let people know that sometimes when somebody's not vegan, there's a huge, big kind of backstory behind it in my son's case. So without going into a huge, big story, all I'll say is my son was diagnosed when he was 17 months old, which is quite young, because he was developing what I would say is relatively normally, and then all of a sudden he started regressing. His speech went, his mobility went, his ability to eat and drink certain products went all awry, his sleep pattern went funny, and just everything went haywire. And we got the diagnosis when he was approximately 17 months old, and his journey's gone from there. He's now 23. So as you can imagine, from just under 2 years old right the way through to now, there's quite a lot that's happened. So I'll just leave other people to kind of ask if there's anything specific they want to ask, and if there's anything else maybe adding in, I could do that later.
Okay. So 17 months is quite early to get a diagnosis, but yeah. I think it's good to get that diagnosis early if it's possible, isn't it? Because they've got access to services and at least that, that level of understanding. Whereas, you know, some people who are diagnosed late, they perhaps have more problems at school, or, you know, they're put through kind of a mainstream school, and it, you know, it's usually problematic. So I think early diagnosis is good.
Yeah.
And it's quite it's like 17, 18 months. I think I've heard parents who've had autistic kids say that they saw that regression. And I think that's something quite common in autism. Again,
Yeah.
I'm not an expert, but I think that kind
With my son, what it was there was some things that were, they were a bit like, oh, what's going on here? And there was other things where I actually he was meant to get like a 15-month assessment. And I specifically said to the nurse doing it, I think he's going to fail in some things. Something's not quite right. I didn't know what it was. And at the time, I thought it was his hearing, because you could stand right behind him, you could speak or call his name, or a bang or something could be right behind him, and he just would not react at all to it. So I thought, oh, it's his hearing. So anyway, to cut a long story short, he got tested based, because I pushed for it because I knew something was up. And from 15 months to 17 months, he was diagnosed. He got a brain scan because they thought he might have encephalitis.
right.
So
Yeah, so fluid on the brain. Is that,
yeah, that was ruled out because he had a really bad dose of chicken pox, really, really bad. And so they thought it might be a connection. They ruled that out, and then they said, no, he's definitely autistic. So there was things I saw, and because of that, that kind of pushed me to get the medical sort of interaction to figure out what was going on. And this GP actually said, oh, you're just being paranoid. There's nothing to worry about. And I pushed it, and it wasn't until he got his diagnosis was like, oh, okay.
yeah.
So, I mean, that's one thing I would say. If you suspect or you're not sure, if a doctor says, oh, you know, you're just being paranoid or whatever, if you have that intuition and that gut instinct that tells you, no, something's up, just, you know, tap into that, because 9 times out of 10, it's right, you know, which was the case with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's an all common story, isn't it? That you know, especially parents of young kids, they go to the doctors, and you know, the doctor just thinks, oh, it's an anxious mum or an anxious dad, and you know, just go away, and there's nothing wrong, and that kind of thing. So it's great that you pushed it, and it's great advice to tell anybody. Just, you know, just go and see a different doctor. If you're not happy with what you've been told, then go and see another doctor, because you kind of know as a parent, like I'm a parent, if anybody's in the chat who's a parent, you know, you kind of get that feeling, you kind of know something's not quite right, don't you? So tell us a little bit more about what your son is like now. So he's not vegan, is he? And he's got sensory issues. So tell us a little bit more. Tell us what is like day-to-day life like.
Right, where do you start? Okay, he's biologically 23 years old, but he has got the mental capacity of by 7 or 8 year old. That's just approximately from what I've been told. So he does not function, process at all like his biological age would suggest. He has got a very childlike quality to him. He's very intelligent, and he's really clever that way, but he's got no common sense that to cut it fine. He's got no concept of danger whatsoever. Like he does a thing called stimming. I don't know if people are aware of that. Like he flaps and he rocks and stuff like that. And he's got tunnel vision. If there's something he likes, like he's fixated on cars and buses and things, he would literally walk out on the road to flap at a bus and not go, oh, that's a bus, that might hurt if that hits me. You know what I mean? Although he knows that's a bus and it's big, that tunnel vision of that's a bus, I like it, and it's, you know, makes me stim. He would not have that mindset. I have to say, right, no, you know, come back, you know, so he doesn't do that. So that gives you a little bit of an idea how he processes with regards to day-to-day things. He's got a terrible sleep pattern. Since he was young, he's had sleep issues, and I'm not big on medication. That's not to say it's not right for other people, but just for him, he is very much, I try and do things more natural ways, you know. I make some of my own things. I wild harvest stuff, and I make some of my own, like, you know, oils and creams and balms and stuff like that, which I try to incorporate into, you know, what I use with him. But that's not always possible. He's not great with medications and that anyway. He doesn't have the ability to swallow things like tablets either. So for day to day, he basically, if you don't tune in with him and you don't kind of guide him, he will literally just like fixate in his own world the whole day. That's pretty much what he would do. He's also got like a den, which is also partly a sensory room. So if he's having a bad day and things are getting on top of him, he can get redirected into there. He actually does it himself now. He'll redirect himself in there, and that will ground him, bring him back down. Regarding sensory issues, he's got, I sent you a list because the list is so long. It is so complex.
It's really long.
Like, oh my God. If you try and say everything that's going on with him, I'll be here all day. So all I'll say is he's hyposensitive, hypersensitive. He's got hyperacusis, which is a sensitivity audially, but it is not just, oh, that's a loud noise, or it can be, like I explained in email, he can be completely fine with the TV blaring in his own space, but yet the washing machine, the you know, somebody doing their lawn outside, you know, the smallest wee things he can freak out about because he, you know, the fingers go in the ears. He does a weird thing. I don't know how he does it. Like, he kind of puts his fingers in his ears and then does that with you. I don't know how he does it. It's a bit of a maneuver. It's like, oh. So that means he's audibly too much, ears too much, everything.
Yeah.
And that's when there's problems. Now that also affects what he eats and drinks, visually what he's seeing, what he's processing. So they're all interlinked with one another in his case. So what he's eating or drinking, and that can refer to things like he will take a food that he eats every day, and before he will put it anywhere near his mouth, he will smell it.
Yeah.
So he smells it, he looks at it, he's had it 10 million times. He has to do this thing. And if something's off with that, he won't eat it. He literally won't eat if something's not how it is.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is how I say to people, it's not just a case that I can say to him, right, Ali, this is how it is, and this is how the industries are, and all that. It would be, and all it would do would just stress him out. So he does eat some vegan foods, and that is not because they're vegan foods, it's because he's smelt that product and, you know, done everything, his whole process that he does, and it's gone, oh, okay. As I've tried with dairy products, that seems to be a huge thing that he cannot substitute. I don't know what I don't know what it is. It's I've tried replacing dairy milk. I've tried vegan cheese as an absolute no-no. It took one sniff of like every type, and it was like, whoa, whoa. I was like, okay, that's not going to happen then. It was not happening. It was not happening. So you can get an idea, like literally everything goes past all the senses first. So it's a headache, and if it's a choice between him eating food or him not eating
food,
then, you know, that's just how it has to be. And I mean, I've been vegan for like about 4 years, and I absolutely can't stand cooking certain things, but I have to switch that part of my brain off to feed him. Like, you know, it's hard because like sometimes my partner, I'm like, you'll have to do that, because it's like sometimes if I'm upstairs doing something and he's asked for something and he started to cook it, I'm like, shut the door, open the back door. I'm like that. I can't bear it. But it's a case of if he's not going to eat, then what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, and it brings up, doesn't it, the story, and it's part of the reason why I'm really pleased that you've come on, because, you know, we live in a non-vegan world, and we as vegans have to tolerate a whole manner of non-vegan things. I mean, literally, if you wanted to rid yourself of every single non-vegan stimulus in the world, you'd be very narrow-minded and have to live in a small room, basically. Just going outside and seeing adverts and Kentucky Fried Chicken and blah blah blah, all of that. You have to almost like desensitize yourself as a vegan. And I think vegans have varying levels of sensitivity to it. Like, I'm not especially sensitive to things like adverts and walking past KFC. I don't freak out over it. I don't like it, but it's not like it's going to affect my day, if you know what I mean. And I was smiling when you were talking about your son sniffing everything. Because I used to do that when I was a kid. I was very, very, and this is why I've got a little bit of empathy with Ali, because I was very, very picky when I was a kid. I was very, I wonder whether having my time back, because I'm much, much older than 23, having my time back, whether I would get a diagnosis of autism, back when I was maybe 3 or 4 years old, because I was incredibly, exactly like Ali. I'd have the telly on and really loud, so much so that my mum wouldn't be able to stand it. But slightest noises, if she was like hoovering in the other room, I couldn't stand it if the telly was on. And I used to sniff all my foods, and if it wasn't exactly right, then that was it. I wasn't going to eat. And so I've grown out of that, kind of. Kind of. There are certain things I just can't tolerate, like grease. If there's grease on food, I can't stand it. I just can't deal with it. And my youngest son, my eldest son's 23 and he's vegan, but my youngest son is 17. He's upstairs. I'm pointing because he's upstairs watching football. But he's very sensitive and he will sniff things and he won't go vegan. And exactly like Ali, there are certain things that he's been happy to switch over. And he's always been used to, because I've been vegetarian since I was 11. So he's been used to, there being a lot of cheese in the house and not very, like when we lived with his dad used to eat meat. So like he did have meat when he was a kid, but I didn't cook it and I didn't buy it or anything like that. But he was always used to a lot of cheese and milk. And he's not really that keen on cheese. And we've recently found out, actually, at the age of 17, we've recently found out that he's got a dairy allergy. So he can't have dairy now. Right. You can't have dairy now anyway. But even people who are not non-autistic, I think, can empathize to a level with those kind of situations that we experience in families. And I think it's a really good conversation for people in the vegan community to keep talking about. Because it's not just you and it's not just me, it's everybody within the vegan world. We navigate that either with our families or with co-workers, and things like that. And it's always worth having that conversation, because I know when we've been kind of chatting offline, you said that you've experienced some negativity from other vegans about your son. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think that's important really to voice, I think.
Well, I've heard things like, well, you're the mother, you're the parent, you tell them, you just say, right, this is how it is. Or you say that I'm the one that cooks for you. So if you don't eat what I put in front of you, then that's all you're getting. It doesn't work that way at all with autism. He would be just like, okay, I'm not eating then. Well, he wouldn't verbalize that. He would just be like, no. And I mean, I've tried being like a tactful, sneaky mum, which I've like, he would only eat a certain brand of cereal. And I thought, I'm broke, so I'm going to do a little a tip here, so I got the old box and I took the cheaper cereal or the other cereal, I think it was from Lidl's or Aldi or something, and put it in the box to see if he would notice. And as soon as that bag opened, he was like, oh, no, thank you, put away. And I'm like, damn it. So, and I've tried that with many different things. So I've tried being forward with it, like try this, try that. And I've tried the sneaky approach. The only thing I can get away with is when I make these like tomato-based sauces, like for lasagna or bolognese or something, and I will add like red lentils. I can add things like very small amounts of things like turmeric, paprika, garlic, but only to a certain level. And if it goes over that level, I've had it.
Yeah.
And I blend it into, I use my blender and I'll like cook the, some onions off or something, and I'll put the tomato and cook the spices in, and with the tomato or the passata, cook that off, blitz it, and then put that as a sauce, and he's okay with that. But if I go too heavy-handed with something, oh no, it's not happening. So that's the only things I can do with regards adding things into meals.
Yeah.
If it's too far one way, it's not a case of being picky. It's not, well, I mean, all people that I've come across with his level of autism anyway, and it's all different because of individualities, personalities, all the rest of it, and other sensory issues if they have. You find that there's usually something like that they have an aversion to, or makes their stomach turn or whatever. But Ali's sensory myriad of issues that he has makes everything super duper enhanced, or super duper the other way. I hope I'm making sense. So it's like, oh my gosh, honestly, when he up till he was 13, he only ate about 4 things, and that was a nightmare. And then I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was puberty. I don't know what it was. All of a sudden, his appetite grew 10 times the size, and I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to end up like a twig, because he's eating, wanting to eat all the time, but then he's so limited. And a couple of things stretched into his diet, but then that was it.
What was he eating? I'm curious, what were the 4 things that he would eat?
Oh God, you don't want to know. Just what I got told by a medical professional, I don't know how true this is, or if it's just a thing you get told, but I got told that at the time of his diagnosis, what he was eating, which was a lot of toddler food, was what he fixated on moving forward till he got to about 13. So it was a lot of finger foods, a lot of things like spaghetti hoops on toast, that type of thing. And then it went for he'd eat the spaghetti, but he wouldn't eat it on the toast. So you had to put the spaghetti hoops or whatever into a ramekin and then put the toast on the side.
Oh, wow.
It was like...
I've got to say, when I was a kid, I probably ate a little bit more than 4 things, but I was probably less than 10 things that, like, for a long time. And if I'm feeling upset or just having, kind of day, I will not eat unless it's those foods. I always revert back to those foods. It's just absolutely fascinating. Have you ever seen the YouTube channel Kevin Chapman?
Yes, I watch his stuff. Ali watches it as well, actually.
Because Andy, Kevin Chapman's son, I've mentioned Kevin Chapman's channel a few times on my channel, because when Kevin was doing daily vlogs, and he does weekly vlogs now, but he's not doing daily vlogs anymore, I was fascinated by the story of Andy, Kevin's son, and he sounds very similar in some ways to the way Ali was, in that, incredibly picky with foods. And I think Andy was on Walker's crisps, like just one flavor of Walker's crisps, and even if the packet changed, like if they did a marketing revamp, he wouldn't eat them. Fish fingers, potato waffles. And it was just, you think, oh my God, how can this kid survive? But he's hit puberty, and he's now starting to try different foods, and you can just see in his face that he's put on weight, and he looks really much more healthy now. But I think you're absolutely right, and I think people in maybe who are, I wanted to say hardcore vegan then, but that makes everyone else sound softcore and not real vegans. But I think anybody who is especially negative, let's say that, about a vegan living with a family member who isn't vegan, I think having a disability or a condition like autism, that's one area in which we can try to make people understand that
Mm.
sometimes within families, nobody's family is what, you know, it's not like when the day you go vegan, you can wave your magic wand and say, right, everybody else in this household is now going to become vegan. It just doesn't work that way.
No.
And if you've got kids, I think I've never openly, then again, I probably just haven't noticed if people have said it to me, you know, have said, why isn't your son vegan? You know, he's living in your house. Why isn't he vegan? Because you buy the food. And it's like, well, actually he's 17 and he goes out and he'll buy his own food, right? You know, that's the thing. But when he was younger, like I said, you know, there was a period where we either lived with his dad or he went to his dad. So he was having his meat meals with his dad, you know. So there is so much judgment, though. There is so much prejudgment, and I'm not saying that in a way that is deriding vegans for being judgmental, right? I think we're all judgmental, right? As a species, we are judgy people. Everybody, we're all judgy, and it's about being able to, I think, get your opinion across, but in a way that is sensitive. And if you don't agree with my son or your son being non-vegan when we are trying to advocate for veganism, well, actually, perhaps those people need to appreciate that we don't live in a perfect world, you know. And none of my other family members are vegan, and I went vegetarian when I was 11. And then I did a spate of veganism. I've told the story so many times now. Did a spate of veganism for 4.5 years when I was a teenager. And then I went back to vegetarianism, and I had lots of negativity from my family. I mean, a lot of negativity from my family, who thought that I was going to die, and I had an eating disorder and all that kind of thing. So when I had children, there was no way that I could have made my kids 100% vegetarian, because other family members were feeding them. So. You know, you can't wave that magic wand. And then when I went vegan in 2016, I all that negativity that people said to me when I was a kid, they said it again. You know, like, what's wrong with you? You're going to lose so much weight, and you're going to go skinny, and you're going to be ill. And it's ridiculous. It's like, we're living in the 21st century. Do you not understand the basics of nutrition? But a few months after I went vegan, my elder son went vegan, and now my daughter's gone vegan. So there has been changes in my family. And I think if you are somebody who is living with non-vegan family members, I mean, your situation is quite different, but with non-vegan family members, they might, you know, just be very gentle, and they might well come round. But in your situation, and I'm sure that there are many people who can empathize with having an autistic kid who is very hypersensitive to smells, and it's, you know, like you say, you can't possibly trick him because his sense of smell is so good, you know. So the wrong brand of cereal. That was me when I was a kid as well.
I was like, what?
My mum couldn't buy the cheap brand. It had to be Kellogg's, or else I knew.
It's funny because, like I say, I thought, because it's the same you were saying about packages changing. If a package changes, that is enough to make him not eat that thing.
Yeah.
And when he was on such a limited diet, I mean, he's still quite limited, but way bigger than he was when he was younger. If somebody changes a packet, you're like, oh no, stop changing the packaging. You want to write to the company saying, stop it. And they're, you know, I know they have to do things like that, but it drives you nuts. You're like, don't you understand? That is what my son refers to with that. You've just changed the packaging. You know what I mean? Oh,
yeah. I think probably he doesn't believe it's the same thing. You know, it's because you've tried to trick him so many times. He doesn't trust you now.
It's like, nope. Oh my God. It's not just like taste buds as well, though. Like it's taste buds smell, but it's also textures, colors. Like so if something looks the same, and maybe say something's a shape and they change the shape of it, or like when he was younger, he'd say to me, he's got quite baby language sometimes, so he'd instead of saying, "Can I have my toast lightly toasted?" he'll say, "Two brown half toasts," which means I want two slices of bread cut into half, toasted. And so here so if somebody doesn't know, they're like, "What?" Uh, and he would say to me like, he was meaning that he wanted it lightly toasted, but he didn't have the vocabulary to
Yeah,
say, "I want the toast toasted, cut into two halves, but lightly toasted." So it came out a bit of a jumble. And I understood exactly what he meant, but other people might not.
yeah.
So it can be down to how much your bread's toasted, which is not necessarily an autistic or sensory thing. It's maybe just how you like it. But for him, it's part and parcel where that's what I'm used to, that's what I like, that's what I know I'm okay with, you know, a bunch of different things. And if it's not that, oh no, that's wrong, mum. That's not
Mm,
right. That's not right.
mm,
So it goes with everything. And also for clothing, when he was younger, he would chew the sleeves of his top. That was sensory. He doesn't do that anymore. And he has got an aversion to wearing anything on his feet. And I think he likes to feel the sensation underfoot.
yeah.
And when you've to tell him, right, Ali, we're going outside, you've got to wear shoes, it's like, oh, but, like, why do I have to wear shoes outside? God knows what you could step on outside. It's okay in the house or in the garden if you know what's in the garden or whatever. But he just could not, he'd be like, that makes no sense. It's the same. Does it matter if I'm, in his brain, the way he was processing, does it matter if I have to wear shoes or socks outside or inside? And so we had to stand him in front of the mirror, same how we learnt expressions. You had to stand him in front of the mirror and go, okay, this is like when you're going outside, and this is like you can't go outside with just your pants on. That's not appropriate. And that's how we got to know, and same with expressions. Like even now, he used to sign. He did a thing, I don't know, probably a lot of people know about it. It's called sign along, which means it's for hearing people as opposed to if you can't hear. So I would, teach him signs. So even now he says the sign. So if he's happy, he won't just go, "I'm happy." He'll go, "Ali is happy mouth."
Oh,
Happy mouth. And that means I'm happy, but he has to tell you the expression as well.
oh, that's really good. That's really good. Yeah, I have a problem with shoes. I've got to tell you all, I have a problem with shoes. So there's only certain shoes I will wear, and there's only one type of trainer that I'll wear, and I'll walk everywhere. I'll find that trainer, and it's one brand, one type of Nike trainer, not sponsored by Nike, but Nike, if you're watching, I'm very happy to take a sponsorship deal from you. And they've changed it slightly. They've changed it, and I'm not completely happy with it. I'm coping with it, but not completely happy with it. And sometimes I walk around work barefoot because I just don't like feet. I don't like feet. I don't like shoes on my feet. So it's it's a well-known thing for me. So these things that you're saying, they're not necessarily autism things, but
No.
when somebody is autistic and their world is their world, they're not bothered about anybody else, are they?
No.
And that's the thing with trying to explain veganism to somebody who is not processing the world in the way that everybody else is. That it's not like you can explain to them, I don't want you to drink milk anymore or eat this kind of cheese anymore because mother cows suffer and baby cows suffer, and because that is not part of his world, is it? It doesn't mean anything to him, and that's not saying that he isn't able to process other things and be highly intelligent in other ways. And that's confusing to people, isn't it? Because
it is,
yeah. you can have somebody who is highly skilled in a particular type of, I don't know, computing or engineering or art or whatever it is, they're highly, highly skilled in it, but yet at the same time, they can't do the most basic things, you know, like understand why they need to wear shoes. But it's just a different way of processing, for whatever reason, it's a different way of processing. And I think that if we bring this topic, you know, back to veganism and people saying that, oh, just give him the vegan alternative, and if he doesn't eat, he'll eat when he's hungry. I don't think those people appreciate that literally some people will starve, will just not eat unless it's exactly, you know, the right level of brown on the toast, the right brand of cereal. So try to swap out, you know, whatever mince for vegan mince. It's not going to wash. They're not going to be tricked into that. Not like my dad. My dad is dead now, but when my dad was alive, and he was quite pot-bellied. He got quite, as he got older, he got quite a belly on him, right? Because when he was young, he was really fit, and then he put on a load of weight, and he got high cholesterol. So he wouldn't take medications, which is great because I think statins are horrible, but he wouldn't take statins. His doctor wanted to put him on statins, and he said, no, I'll sort it out myself. So he thought that he'd cured his high cholesterol by going for a walk every day. Actually, my mum had just taken meat away. So he hadn't realised. They were still having chicken, like, you know, every now and again. But she was making him things like chilies and lasagnas and bolognese and using Quorn mince. And he just didn't realise. So when he went for his 6 months check at his doctor's and his cholesterol had come right down, he was really pleased with himself because he thought that he was, you know, this walk every day it was the thing that had beat cholesterol. But actually it was just taking red meat out of his diet, and that seemed to have done the trick. But for my dad, you know, he didn't care. He just thought it was mince, and he thought it was nice, and he didn't realise. But if my mum had told him, that, this is the thing, if my mum had told him that he'd given up red meat, you know, that actually the way to get your cholesterol down is to give up red meat, he would not have gone for that. He would not have, he'd have gone and bought burgers just to spite her, you know. So she did it in this really clever way. So that's good. But for Ali and lots of people, you know, who have that hypersensitivity, that's not going to wash. Right? No. You're not going to be able to do that. So I think, you know, that level of understanding and that ongoing conversation within the vegan movement, I think is really, really, really useful and really important. And, you know, I guess that as time goes on and as more and more people do, maybe in another generation, you know, where more people are brought up plant-based. I'm not going to say brought up 100% vegan, but brought up plant-based from birth, things might start being different, because the vast majority of us, you know, there's only a handful of families, certainly that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's many, many, many throughout the world, but, you know, we're only aware of those who tell us that they are, you know, that are entirely vegan and have been vegan everybody's been vegan since birth. I'd love to have been in a situation like that, but, you know, the vast majority of us aren't born into that situation, and we discover veganism at various times throughout our lives for different reasons. Some people get into veganism for health, some people get into it purely for ethics, and other people, you know, just find their way into it slowly for, you know, I don't know, for whatever reason. But we can't, like I said before, we can't wave that magic wand and rewrite history. But in another generation, maybe, you know, there are going to be more people who are plant-based from birth, and who, if they are autistic, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, because they wouldn't have found the foods that are animal products, wouldn't have found them in the first place. So the things that they're fixated on would have been naturally plant-based.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet. We're not in a society where that is a thing, unfortunately. So I suppose we've all got to do the best we can, and that's it. And we're all judgmental, but I think, it's just about that sensitivity, isn't it? Being a little bit more
mindful.
sensitive.
I think if you've got people coming into the community and maybe they go to a vigil or something and something happens where somebody's talking about something and they don't realize that person maybe has an autistic family member, they're automatically going to have their heckles up because they're going to be thinking, whoa, So I think if people just are a bit more mindful that way, particularly when it comes to activism side of things, and I do what I call silent activism, which is I wear jackets and have bags and they have distinct messages on them. And I've had people tap me on the back in a coffee shop or something and say, I totally agree with that. Or what does that mean? Like, I'm not quite sure what that means. Like I've had what was it I had on? It was to do with milk anyway. And it was nothing horrible, but somebody tapped me on the back and went, what does that mean, not your milk? What? I don't get that. And I was like, there was a kid in the queue, and I feel like I don't want to step on another parent's toes that way. So I just said, just check out the dairy industry online. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah. So little things like having a bag with something on it, like I've got hunt sab bags, so it's like hunting is not my bag. And little things where I've got things on my jacket and people will interact with you voluntarily. And I find that is way more, you seem to get more friendly conversations or more interaction with people doing it that way. I found a lot of times, like I've had this experience myself being out and about. Now, bearing in mind, you've got a rough idea how Ali is now. Ali's got a thing where he fixates on something because it's got a logo on it, and it's not because he's a brand magnet, it's because it's something that he knows and he gravitates toward because he knows it. So what I have, like when you've got a vigil going on in the street where people have got tablets or TV screens or whatever they're holding, what I've tried to explain to other people doing those type of forms of activism is you can have somebody and they see the device, their mental brain goes LG or Samsung or whatever, and and they gravitate towards it. And like with Ali, he would pick out sounds. He's got a thing as well called echolalia, which is he will repeat what he hears. And it could be a full sentence, it could be a sound. So somebody has like a device playing, and even if he's not mentally paying attention to exactly what's going on in the actual footage, he'll hear sounds and process little bits, and then the whole way along the road or when he gets back home, he is mimicking said things. And he could mimic a sound that he doesn't know what it is, even down to like an animal in a particular situation, and they're responding to the environment in an obviously not positive way, and he picks up that sound. He doesn't understand what it is. He picks that sound up, and then he goes home making that sound.
Oh dear.
That's not good, if you get what I mean. So what I'm saying is, in activism, I'm not saying people can't do activism in different ways, but I think there's little things where people have to also remember when that child or adult goes home, or they maybe have to be, it's not dragged, but kind of pulled away from the situation because it's stressing them out, and then they go home in the car or they go in the bus or whatever, and they get home, the parents or the carers are left picking up the pieces at the other end. So the activist partaking in the event might be completely oblivious to that, and then that person goes home, takes what they've heard, seen, whatever, home, and that rolls out, and a sound, expression, a sentence. People, there's Ali does echolalia now, where he heard something when he was about 3 or 4 years old that he still mimics to this day.
Wow.
And then there's other things where he will pick something up and it's a couple of days thing or a couple of weeks thing. But if you take that, what I've just said there, and process that in a way where somebody, an adult or a child's taken all that and that comes home with them. And then the parent or the carer's like, oh my gosh, that's not appropriate what he's picked up or what she's picked up. But the person with the sensory issues doesn't realise they're just picking up feedback or something they've heard. And that can be really it can be unknowingly for the people involved in activism, dangerous for the person that's picking that up.
Yeah. I guess, again, it's about, being mindful, isn't it? And those perhaps, let's say, for example, at A Cube of Truth, those around doing the outreach, perhaps being a little bit more mindful of people who are like Ali, who are maybe gravitating towards them, but not for the reason that they're expecting. And finding that way of maybe redirecting. I think if I was in that situation and I was the outreach person, if you've got that mindfulness that somebody's gravitating towards you, but they're gravitating towards something really, really specific, and it isn't the animals, it's about redirecting them, isn't it? And I don't know how possible that is in a a live situation where everything's happening all at once. But these are really, really important issues, and I've never heard anybody talking about these kinds of problems with vegan activism before. We've probably had these conversations maybe privately or in comment sections, but having it in an open forum on a live stream, I think it's just having that knowledge and having that mindfulness that we do want to advocate, and in a really active way. I mean, I'm in support of the more direct action. I'm in support of going out on streets, doing that kind of thing, that really in your face stuff. I have a favourable kind of mindset to that because I think it can be effective. But at the same time, we've got to also acknowledge that it's not going to be beneficial to everybody, and that there are people, small children, people with autism, people with other processing disorders, learning difficulties, who are not going to be able to understand what that means and why it's there. And it's not like you can even explain to them, like with a child, maybe a small child who is neurotypical, maybe you can have that conversation with them. And that's important to have that conversation with them, if they're cognitively able to understand it. But with people who are big, who look adults, we were saying before we went live, you think that an adult is communicating with you in your world, don't you? And and that you're having a reciprocal conversation, but we can't take these things for granted. And it's just really important to acknowledge that, I think. But I like silent activism. And I do exactly the same as you. When what was it? It would have been fox hunting. When fox hunting was, I'm going back to the 1990s. When fox hunting, they still hunt foxes, don't they? They just do it under the radar. But when it was all kind of going through and there was campaigns against it, I had a T-shirt and it said, "For fox's sake, ban hunting." Yeah. And I used to wear it till it stunk because I had so many people on a daily basis stop me and ask me what it meant. And it's like, is it not obvious what it means? But, it's like, it's a really good conversation opener. So much so that I used to wear it at work. It's not in the job that I'm in now, a different job. And one of my co-workers was actually a farmer, right? He was a technician, right? So his wife did the farming stuff, but he was was a technician by day, and then by night he was a farmer. And he used to have like rare breeds of sheep and God knows what else, and taking a fortune off the EU in subsidies. And he was very, very open about it, but that's a different story. And he was pro hunting, and he complained to our boss. We had the same boss. He complained to our boss that I was making a political statement by this T-shirt that I frequently used, because he got out the regulations, and he'd found out that we weren't allowed to either put political posters up on walls. So he made my colleague take all of her anti-hunting posters off her office wall. He was successful in that. But he thought that also he could have a go at me by complaining that I was wearing this anti-hunting T-shirt. And my boss just turned around and said, political statements don't relate to clothing. I cannot dictate what someone wears, especially when it's a message that I wholly agree with.
Yeah.
So it's like, yay, that backfired. But I think having that conversation opener in places where you wouldn't ever have had a conversation about veganism or about hunting or about whatever else, we're talking about. I think that is so easy to do, and it's easy for everybody to do. And, you don't have to have that level of confidence to go out and stand on the street like Joey Armstrong does and, shout people down. You can just wear something or a badge or, something like that. I used to wear a lot of like rainbow badges and the pink triangles as well, like the LGBT. I don't think you see the pink triangles so much now, but I had pink triangle earrings when I was a teenager. And again, it's people ask you about it and it's good. But anyway, what would you like to see? Like, we'll wrap up in like 10 minutes, but what would you like to see in the vegan movement, like moving forward? What would be kind of a message that you'd give, given everything we've talked about and given that, the way that your son is and the way that possibly the vegan movement aren't quite always understanding that we don't live in a perfect world. What would be, a message that you could give them, or advice that you could give them, maybe?
I think maybe particularly if you're coming into the community and you're like maybe new or you're transitioning, like, I think a lot of these kind of topics, they're kind of treated a little bit as taboo. Like, if you bring up something like that, people are going to be like, no, we're going to steer clear of that. The thing is, I think if these kind of things come to the forefront and people know, okay, let's be mindful of this or that, then you're more likely to get less cross wires, which is a start. Like when certain people said that to me, when that happened to me about my son, I was like, they clearly don't understand the full capacity of things. Like, it's not just like, he's autistic, oh well, it's your job as a parent to do A, B, or C. They just took something and ran with it. And I think if people are educated, by that I mean get told about certain things, maybe vigils or whatever, then, like I mentioned, I saw somebody in the chat saying that that somebody with, like, for example, Ali's mentality shouldn't be around, shouldn't be anywhere around activism. Now, that's not me taking him into that environment. That's walking down your high street or, going somewhere where something is put in his sight of vision or whatever. And I can't control that. I can't control what he sees 2 yards in front of his nose. You know what I mean? So I think with regards to that side of things, like, maybe have things there that, I always said, I've mentioned this a few times before about maybe having, I know some people used to use the little boxes to put the screens in. I know some people are pro that and against that for different reasons. Or have a little tent where if somebody sees a tent and it's got like something on it that a parent may recognize as a, maybe like, don't come into the tent if you feel that your child or you don't, can't be around that environment for whatever reason, particularly if it's a medical reason. But then what I get on the backside of that is that, well, then that's defeating the purpose, because it's taking it from the open domain to a kind of a enclosed. So it's hard, because obviously you want people that you can process information in a you know, a way where somebody like my son's not going to come across that accidentally or whatever. But at the same time, you don't want to take away people's personal freedom and right to share that type of information either. So it's like, it's hard to say what's the best thing to do, because I don't know really, because it would be hard to keep it totally safe for somebody like my son walking past, but then have it so that other people that you want to maybe see it.
Yeah.
So that's a hard one. It might be something in the future for people that are running different, you know, vigils and organizations or whatever, to maybe sit down and have a think about things like that and think, right, what could we do here to have a bit of middle ground?
Yeah.
Because it could be that tiny little change or that tiny little tweak that could be the difference between you know, somebody not being, like I say, what I said about somebody picking up things involuntarily because it's just how they are, how they take things into excuse me. Oh, old age doesn't come itself, I tell you. So then that would then make it so that you're not standing on other people's toes in one way, but at the other side of things, you are protecting the vulnerable.
Yeah. I mean, you're never going to get a perfect situation that's going to suit everybody. And the fact that, you know, these activist events are done in high streets has got that, it's that purpose of, you know, it's confronting, it's disrupting, it's saying this is happening, whether you like it or not. I think it is about the organizers just being more mindful and having those doing outreach who are more mindful and who are able to maybe redirect and things like that. But it's definitely a conversation that needs to continue to happen, and it's useful to the vegan movement because it doesn't direct away from our call to action and the way that we want to defend animals, but what it does really is it supports the message. It supports the message that we're not here to just shout people down blindly. What we're here to do is to educate and to advocate, and that has to be done in a sensitive manner. It always, all education has got to be done in a sensitive manner, and regardless of what that topic is. Okay, right. I can see that we've had loads of people asking questions, and I've just completely ignored the chat because we've been having a really good conversation. If you've got a question that you've asked and I can't find it because there's conversations going on, and I'm not sure I can really now start picking out the questions. But could you pop us some questions back? If you've asked a question in further up, just ask us again, and we can have a see whether we can answer them. We got a few more. Chris Hines is in. Twisted Hip is in. Grumpy Vegan Grandad. Race Lever. Ask us some questions. Ask us some questions. I'll go further up. I know there were questions. People were asking questions all the way through, and I've just completely ignored. Oh, we've got something about Leo Venus here. Leo Venus is cool. He's a real vegan. I don't think John ever was. So we've got a big conversation going on about John Venus. The Real Thing says, I'm ADHD. I'm very strange compared to what I see in normal people. Yeah, none of us is normal.
Embrace your strange and embrace your weird. That's what I say.
Yeah. Oh, Vegan Gains is in the chat. Hi, Richard. Terry's in the chat. Tofu. Veg Met Cod Bod is in the chat. Kayla, I think I mentioned Kayla earlier. I think we need to have different people. I cannot reach everybody. Vegan, what? Oh, I see what you're saying, that no one person can reach everybody, right? So there might be a specific type of activism that really hits home to somebody.
Yeah.
and a different type doesn't. So it's good to mix it up, isn't it? That we're doing activism in our own ways. Some of it's silent and just relating to conversations. Some of it's more out there, and yeah, we're all different. And I say this continually, that the way to do the best activism is to do it in relation to your strength. So if your strength is in having those sociable conversations, you know, that just come really naturally to you, then do that. But if you're more confrontational and you just want to stand there and shout people down, and who are very, very efficient at it, like Joey, or you're able to argue the science, then do it your way. But we're all...
Or maybe have some people, like, for example, in my situation, because I'm a full-time carer, I'm not able to get out to much things. And when I do, it's highly, it's like a lunar mission trying to get something organized to do something. It's like you can plan something a month in advance and something always happens. So like having people like that's in my situation coming together as a collective group maybe, and then we will kind of maybe know more about how to approach if we see, like, if I see a situation happening and I was like in an environment where there was a vigil or something going on, I'm more tuned into picking up, like I'm not saying I'm an expert, but like I would maybe pick up on some things maybe some people might not. And I like with my son, like there's things with him, if I know he's getting stressed out, there can even be a look he does and I go, and I know how to handle it or redirect him. So if I was to see something similar in somebody else, I might be able to say, okay, let's redirect this, or take, maybe turn this around that way, or whatever. If I see somebody about to pass by with, I have T-shirts for my son that I've got autism related, things on them when he's out and about. But if he was to break away from me, for example, he will not wear an ID band or a Medi bracelet or anything like that. So I have something on his person, so he's to break away from me and somebody saw his T-shirt, they'd be like, oh, wait a minute, okay. Immediately they would see that before anything else. So it might be advisable to maybe say to people, like, if you see something like that, you can maybe slightly turn things till that person passes, or there's about to be something that can be done to kind of take the pressure off of the person with the disability, but maybe the parents or the carers as well.
Yeah.
It could be a split second. It could be, right, okay, folks, just turn this way for a minute.
Yeah. To be honest, again, it goes back to what we were saying like 15 minutes ago about, being mindful, and the organizers of events not being so dogmatic that they're not willing to take people's advice or information on board. So if there is, perhaps, for example, if there was an organizer that was so dogmatic that they were not willing to listen to anybody, well, then people who can perhaps advise them in a way that's effective, they're not ever gonna hear that message, are they? So it's just being open to experience, open to doing things slightly different, whilst at the same time being free to, disrupt businesses and go out into the street and confront people, but also at the same time having that level of sensitivity. We have got some questions though. Grumpy Vegan Grandad, Michelle, I wanted to ask you a comment about undiagnosed ADHD, as I'm also strongly suspecting I'm ADHD, but can't get tested unless I pay a lot of money. Yeah, I guess I don't know what to tell you, Danny. Really, I've always lacked attention. I can't concentrate. I can't focus on anything unless I'm really, it really interests me, and then I hyper focus. But I'd never seek a diagnosis because, at our age, if I went to the doctors and said, I think I've got ADHD, they're going to be like, well, you've functioned this long, we're not going to send you for testing. So yeah, I suppose what you've got to ask yourself is, would a formal diagnosis benefit you? Would really knowing that you're diagnosed by a doctor, would that benefit you? Or actually are there ways that if you feel that you lack attention, are there things that you can do to help yourself? Do you really need the diagnosis and pay a lot of money? I don't know if that's helpful at all, but that's the way I see myself, I guess. Right, let's pick another question. There's a lot of conversation, but not a lot of questions.
It's one of those things where, like, I don't want to just feel like I'm talking at people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's about autistic people taking part in activism.
Not really. It's more about.
No, it's about activists understanding that not everybody has the cognitive capacity to understand veganism and also to understand what activism's all about. But there are plenty of people who are autistic who are vegan. And there are plenty of people within the activist movement who are autistic. But because autism is such a broad spectrum, you know, it's almost like there's lots of different conditions and they all get tagged into this autistic spectrum disorder. And actually, there's probably different conditions, different reasons why those things are there, you know, different brain regions and God knows what, different genes and whatever. So if you're high functioning and one of your kind of interests is animals or ethics, and that's your focus and that's your specialism, then you're going to be incredibly effective as an activist, aren't you? Because that you're not going to be sidetracked. You're going to be focused, and you're going to use that kind of specialist knowledge to forward the activist movement. So I know people who are autistic in the vegan activist scene, but I think with this conversation, we're looking at it really from a carer's perspective and also from the activist perspective about how to deal with effective activism and not kind of distracting from the vegan message, but also being mindful that there are people out there who are not neurotypical and they're not able to process the vegan message in the way that it's intended. And that can potentially be a big problem. And also to stop being so judgy about people who don't have that cognitive capacity. I think that's really my overall message is let's have a little bit of common sense. And sometimes I don't see common sense, and that's not against vegans, that's against humanity. I don't see a lot of common sense. I don't see a lot of common sense in humanity generally. I think we need a bit more common sense, but I don't have any common sense, so I'm sorry, I can't help you. Oh dear God. Right, any final question? Well, I'm going to say final questions, but we've not had many questions. Impressions. Sorry, wrong one. Just a quick note, a lot of autistic people don't like the terms high and low functioning, as some people can be high. Yeah, I understand. Sorry, Chris. I know that. I did know that. I know that. But I don't know what else word to use. Like, that's more of kind of a medicalized terminology, isn't it? I don't know what else word to use, because you can't just say someone with autism, because that can mean so many things. And we don't use the word Asperger's now. That's been taken out of the diagnostic criteria. We just say ASD now. So I think
I've put it in ways to people as well. Like when I'm speaking about something that is in a big scale, what I will say to people is I'm talking about my son, although he's got a different bunch of things going on. That's I'm talking about him as an individual. Now, this is what you find a lot of people don't do, particularly in the professional side of things, like social workers and that. You have to say to them, look, you know, stop just sticking him in a box and saying he's autistic. Is that you need to take the individualized person that he is and say, okay, this young man has this, but because of this or this personality or wee quirks he has, that we'll go down this route or we'll try and with this route, because I find that particularly probably a good few years ago now, when you try to get things like support packages in place, you'll get a organization or something involved with you, and they'll go, it's generic, it's like, which is wrong. It shouldn't be wrong, but it shouldn't be just like she or he or whoever is autistic, therefore, boom, that's what we do. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and that, we have a disability service. I work at university, for anybody in the chat who doesn't know, but we have a disability service, and they work really well because they don't just give us like, this person is dyslexic. They give us what they actually need. So, you know, it's like, not everybody who's dyslexic needs X, right? It's individual, because dyslexia is very generic and, you know, broad. And so it's the same with any condition, that if they've got a student's diagnosed with a mental health condition, you know, you don't just say they've got depression, because what does that mean, really? You know, there's so many ways that somebody with depression needs that little bit of extra support. So yeah. But at the same time, you know, I think sometimes we become a little bit bogged down with terminology, and it stifles us understanding a little bit, because if you have to explain exactly a whole list of traits just to have a conversation with somebody, that can be problematic as well, can't it? So it's a big, difficult minefield, and I think we've discussed a lot. So let's call it a day here. It's 6:10. So I say, well, let's do an hour, and I always go over. But anyway, I've really enjoyed this. I hope people who've watched this and who will watch the replay have enjoyed it as well. That, you know, take it in the spirit that it's intended. We are two vegans. We're trying to do the best for the vegan movement. We're not coming on here saying you've got to do this, you've got to do that because of, you know, autism or because of this one person's needs. It's about having that conversation and being mindful and being open to having conversations on how to take the vegan movement forward. So that's just a little caveat at the end, that, you know, don't all unsubscribe thinking that I'm anti-vegan or something just because I'm saying vegan problems in the title. You know, we're having an open dialogue, and I think these things are just so important to voice. Yeah. So thanks for your questions. And if you did ask and I just completely ignored you, then I'm really sorry. I don't think we've had any super chats. But if you have super chatted and I've completely forgotten or just not looked today, I'm so sorry. Ask me in the comments of this video once it goes like live on the channel, and I'll answer it then. But I don't think we've had any super chats. So thank you, Laws, for coming on. Check out Laws' YouTube channel, OctoberRainRocks. Link is in the description of this video. And I'm going to be live streaming again. I'll do my monthly Q&A for August, when it's August, so probably next weekend. I might fit in another live stream at some point during this week if I think of a topic that's worthy of a live stream. If not, then I'll do the Q&A. I'm not going to kind of force a topic just to do a live stream, but I'll definitely be doing the monthly Q&A at the beginning of August. So I shall speak to you all soon, and I hope you've enjoyed. Bye, folks.
Bye.